بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, yesterday we began our durus with the adab of the students of Deen, and we reached this second or the first adab, which was comprised of these three: sincerity, dignity, and goal. So we spoke about ikhlas. We spoke about the severity of not having ikhlas. We also spoke about the dignity of a student of knowledge, how the angels will lower their wings out of humility and respect for a student of knowledge to walk on, and how all creatures pray for such an individual. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to spend his time with those who seek the knowledge of deen. In Surah Al-Kahf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Meaning, have sabr or patience, or sit with those individuals, spend time with those individuals who call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who seek يريدون وجهه, they have ikhlas for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ تُرِيدُ زِينَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Do not seek the beauties of the dunya. So this shows us how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to sit with those who were basically ashabu sufa, and those people devoted their lives to the knowledge of deen. They devoted their lives to the acquisition of knowledge. So the ultimate goal of the student is to learn, practice, and propagate. And we spoke about this, how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ballighu anni walau ayah." Spread the message of Islam, whatever you know, even if it is one ayah. So if we know one single ayah, we know everyone here, alhamdulillah, we know Surah Al-Fatiha. So we know Surah Al-Fatiha automatically. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, "Ballighu anni," to do tabligh or to spread the message of Islam, whatever you know, even if it is one ayah. So we have to first learn the Quran, the Hadith, fiqh, everything, our beliefs, practice it, and then finally propagate it. And then we have to set practical goals that have to be met periodically. So as a student of Deen, if we're following a certain curriculum, then we have to prepare for exams, imtihan. We have certain goals to be met. We're reading a specific book, we have to finish that book. And if we're not studying in a specific curriculum, then we have to focus on whatever our mashayikh tell us, that study this book or study that book, and we have to set a tartib or a program in which we can learn adequately. Without a proper tartib or a system, we won't be able to do much. So this was sincerity, dignity, and goals. As a student, we need sincerity. Without that, everything is useless. Number two, we have to have dignity. We have to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam holds the students of knowledge in a very high standard, and they see them in a great light. And we need to have goals as students. Let's move on. Zeal, perseverance, and utilizing our time. So this is essential for us as students of knowledge. The background here is actually a makhlad of Sahih Muslim, or the Sharh of Sahih Muslim, I believe, of Imam al-Nawawi. It could be Sahih Muslim or the Sharh of Sahih Muslim. So a makhlad is a manuscript. So books used to be handwritten. This is a picture of a handwritten book here. So this is the background there. So let's move on to zeal, perseverance, and utilizing our time wisely. As a student of Deen, we need to have zeal. We need to push forward. We need to desire knowledge. Without the desire for knowledge, we cannot attain knowledge because we won't be motivated. Essentially, it's our motivation. Perseverance is absolutely necessary because definitely we will encounter difficulties on our path to knowledge. Whether that is financial difficulties, whether that is mental difficulties, frustration in not learning, not being able to understand, or any other type of difficulties, even spiritual difficulties may have to be encountered when we are students of Deen. And that is essential, that we have to overcome these things. And obviously, we need to utilize our time wisely. The more we utilize our time wisely, the more we will be able to understand. All right, so only one will receive knowledge if he or she works hard enough. There's a saying in Arabic, العلم لا يعطيك بعضه حتى تعطيه كلك. وإذا أعطيته كلك لا يعطيك إلا بعضه وهو على خطر. So what this means is that knowledge will not give you a portion of itself until you give it your all. And if you give it your all, and when you give it your all, it will not give you all of it, rather it'll give you a portion, and even that is ala khatar, meaning in a dangerous state. What it means is that if you don't try to get knowledge, if you don't give it your all, knowledge won't give you a portion of itself. So when you give your all to the sake of knowledge, you try your hardest, then you will receive some knowledge. You won't get all knowledge. There is not a single alim who can say that they have got all of the knowledge of deen. It's impossible. However, collectively, alhamdulillah, the knowledge of deen is preserved, but there is not a single alim that can say that I know every single aspect of deen. So, al-ilmu la yu'tika ba'dahu hatta tu'tiyahu kullak. Knowledge will not give you a portion of itself until you give it your all. And then when you give it your all, it will not give you except a small portion. So after you've given everything you have to the acquisition of knowledge, it will give you only a portion. وَهُوَ عَلَى خَطَرٍ. And then even if you have done that, do you know if it's the correct knowledge or not? Do you know if you had ikhlas or not? Do you know if this will be beneficial knowledge or non-beneficial knowledge? That is also dangerous. That is why these adab are set in place so that we can get the proper knowledge and have the proper etiquette to acquire that knowledge. So in the past, the acquisition of knowledge was much more difficult. It was very difficult in the past. And here there are some stories, and I hope that I can go through these stories because we probably don't have the time for it. So I'll skip the first one, and this is the story of Imam Baqi bin Makhlad. And he went through a very difficult time. He was from Andalus, which is Spain, and he went and he traveled all the way to Hijaz and even past that in the search of knowledge. And he did this twice. When he was about 20, he went from Spain all the way to Hijaz, which is Makkah, Medina, and even past that to Iraq and all of those areas. And it is said that he went also by foot from Spain all the way to Iraq, all the way to Persia, on foot in the search of knowledge. And not only for the search of knowledge for one person. He didn't go for the search of knowledge. He went for the search of the knowledge of one individual. Imam Baqi bin Makhlad went to seek Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Imam Ahmad, the founder of the Hanbali madhab, he went all the way to that area to search for knowledge by being his student. When he reached, he was very grieved to find out because they didn't have social media, they didn't have WhatsApp, they didn't have all these things, Facebook, etc. He went by foot and he went all the way over there. And then he realized that the mihna was going on. That is when there was an issue regarding, is the Quran created or not? And because of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah said that the Quran is not created, it is a sifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal was amongst the greatest propounders of that view. So he was on house arrest. So he was in house arrest. So Imam Baqi bin Makhlad comes all the way from Spain, only to find out that Imam Ahmad in Baghdad is in house arrest and he can't get hadith. So his entire walking and traveling and going through the desert and going through North Africa, crossing a body of water, then crossing North Africa, then going from Egypt all the way to Imam Ahmad to find out that you can't get hadith. So he's extremely grieved. This is the difficulties that they went through. Then after that, he was new in that area and no one knew him. So in that sense, he had an advantage. He went to Imam Ahmad's house and he knocked on his door. Imam Ahmad opened the door and saw someone he didn't know. Baqi bin Makhlad said, I am a stranger. I came from very far. Imam Ahmad said, where? From Morocco? He said, no, farther than that. He said, where? He said, I came from Spain. And he said, that's very far. That's very far. So he said, I came only to learn from you. That's it. So he said, is that true? He said, yes. So Imam Baqi said that, you know what? No one knows me here. I have an advantage in that no one will say that I'm taking hadith from you because it was impossible to study under him at that time. The government wouldn't allow it. He was on house arrest from the government. So he said that every day I will dress myself as a beggar. I'll come with a stick, I'll have shabby clothing, rags on, and then I will come to your door and I will say, al-ajr, meaning give me something to eat, give me some foods, give me some money. And when I do that, you can come and you can say one or two hadith. Imam Ahmad said that's a good idea, we'll do that. So every day, instead of going, Imam Ahmad also made another shart or condition, and he said that you can't go by any other muhaddith. You're not allowed to sit by any other muhaddith. And there were great muhaddithin at that time. Yahya ibn Ma'in and all these great muhaddithin were alive in that same area. So he was not allowed to go by them because it would seem like he's a student of hadith and the government will know that you're not a beggar, you're a student of hadith and you're trying to trick us. So he would only go to Imam Ahmad and every day he would get 1, 2 hadith like that. And this is how he gained knowledge. He basically, humbled himself so much to seem like a beggar. Let's ask ourselves, what do we do for the sake of knowledge? How much are we attached to dunya and we claim to be students of knowledge? And this individual walked from Spain and then dressed himself as a beggar. And that is true ikhlas, that he totally gave himself up for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the acquisition of knowledge. Imam Ahmad saw this and that sincerity after the mihna was removed, after the government changed the law when they had a new Khalifa. Imam Ahmad was removed from house arrest and he again took his seat in the teaching the halaqat of hadith. And whenever Baqi bin Makhlad would come, and imagine Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, thousands of students around him. He would see him from a distance and he would tell them to move and make him sit right next to him. And he said, if you want to see a student of knowledge, look at him. So this is true sincerity and zeal. Look at his zeal for knowledge, how much he wanted knowledge. And like that, there are more stories. Inshallah, let's speak about it. Inshallah, it's of some benefit, and we'll have to prolongate our adab portion for a few more days, I guess, if you want to finish. I don't know if you guys want to finish right away. We can do that as well. Okay.
Speak more about adab.
Yeah.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, let's ask on the group.
Yeah, you can ask on the group, inshallah. Sayyidina Jabir, radiallahu anhu, the Sahabi. This came from the Sahaba. He traveled to Sham when he was either in Makkah or Medina. That's very far. It's not by plane, it's not by car. It's it's difficult, it's far. It's Syria. He traveled the distance of a month for one hadith. He heard that an individual knew a certain hadith, and so he traveled all the way over there. And this is what's called talab al-ulu. So the muhaddithin, they're very cautious and they're very zealous for this talab al-ulu. That is when you hear a hadith from an individual, but the person that individual has heard it from another person who's still alive. So let's say, for instance, I heard a hadith from Zayd, and Zayd has heard a hadith from Amr. Amr stays in Africa. Zayd is in Atlanta. So because I'm so into hadith and I have so much zeal for knowledge, I hear this from Zayd, but I decide, no, it's not enough. Amr is alive. I'm going to hear it directly from him because he's closer to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The chain is shorter. So I travel all the way to Africa to get that. So Sayyidina Jabir radiallahu anhu, he traveled to Sham just because he heard someone knew a hadith that he didn't know. So this was from the Sahaba's time. There was another incident there is in Arabic also, in the hadith, it says that a person came from Medina to Abu Darda radiallahu anhu. And Abu Darda radiallahu anhu was in Dimashq. Dimashq is Damascus in Syria. So a person came to him from Medina. And then he said, Ma aqdamaka ya akhi, what has brought you to me? This individual came from Medina to Damascus. And he said, Hadithun balaghani annaka tuhaddithu an Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I heard you know of a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Abu Darda radiallahu anhu said, Ama ji'ta li haja, is there no other need that you came for? You just came to learn a hadith? Qala la, I don't have any other need. Qala ama qadimta li tijara, did you not come for tijara or business? Qala la. Qala ma ji'ta illa fi talabi hadha al-hadith, you only came for this? He said, yes, this is why I came. Then Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, before telling the individual what hadith he wanted to know, he said, فَإِنِّي سَمِعْتُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم يقول, I've heard Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say, مَنْ سَلَكَ طَرِيقًا يَبْتَغِي فِيهِ عِلْمًا سَلَكَ اللَّهُ بِهِ طَرِيقًا إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. An individual who travels seeking knowledge, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow him to travel to Jannah. The road to Jannah becomes easy for this person because he has adopted the road towards knowledge. وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَتَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا رِضَاءً لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ. The malaika place their wings on the floor for the student of knowledge, so he can walk out of dignity and the honor that they have and humility that they have before such an individual. So the Ahlul Dunya, people of Dunya may say that this person has no money, this person has no, jah and what you call fame or anything that we have to respect. But who cares about Ahlul Dunya when the angels are putting their wings down for this individual? This is a great maqam that this individual has. Then he said, وَإِنَّ الْعَالِمْ لَيَسْتَغْفِرَ لَهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ حَتَّى الْحِيتَانُ فِي الْمَاءِ. In alim, everyone in the heavens and in the earth, even the fish, they will ask for forgiveness for this individual. So imagine, like we spoke about, angels, birds, fish, all creatures ask for his forgiveness or her forgiveness. وَفَضْلُ الْعَالِمِ عَلَى الْعَابِدِ كَفَضْلِ الْقَمَرِ عَلَى سَائِرِ الْكَوَاكِبِ. The virtue and the greatness of a alim, or a person that has the knowledge of deen, his greatness over a abid or a normal individual who just worships and does not have the knowledge is comparable to the moon in comparison to the stars. When we look out at the 14th, 15th night and we see a full moon, and then next to it you may see some stars. The stars seem insignificant. The moon is glowing in splendor. This is the how an alim is in comparison to normal ubbad. إن العلماء ورثة الأنبياء إن الأنبياء لم يورثوا دينارا ولا درهما إنما ورثوا العلم فمن أخذ به أخذ بحظ وافر. The ulama are the inheritors of the prophets. And the prophets do not leave their inheritance as in dinar and dirham and dollars. Prophet Anbiya alayhi wasallam don't leave wealth, physical wealth behind. They don't leave cash behind. إِنَّمَا وَرَّثُوا الْعِلْمِ. They leave the wiratha of knowledge. This is what the Anbiya alayhi wasallam leave behind. This is their inheritance. فَمَنْ أَخَذَ بِهِ أَخَذَ بِحَظٍ وَافِرٍ. Anyone who takes that inheritance has taken a great amount. Now imagine a wealthy person, millions and millions of dollars, billions of dollars, this person passes away. Imagine his inheritors. That money gets split up, but each one gets $1 billion. He's happy. He's set for life. Now imagine the Anbiya alayhi wasallam, how much knowledge they had. No one will get all of that, but it'll be split up amongst the ulama. And they're getting that what the Anbiya alayhi wasallam had. That's much more valuable than those billions of dollars. So this is something very important that we need to seek. Another story of Imam al-Nawawi, inshallah we'll speak about that even further when we finish the Adab portion. We'll speak about his life. Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, when he went to Damascus to study, he studied there for 2 years in the Madrasa Rawahiyya. When he was there, he says himself, I never lied down to sleep. For 2 years, he didn't lie down. Now, if we listen to that, it's impossible. You say he has insomnia or he has some disease or he's a maniac. He said, if the sleep had overpowered me, I would lie down on some books, and then when I, got a little bit energy, I'd wake up and study again. This is his talab and his zeal for knowledge. Obviously, it's very difficult to find someone like that today, and I obviously will not recommend that. I say get your 7, 8 hours good sleep and study when you can. But this was our salaf, the people who left behind the inheritance of Islam. These are the people who took a large chunk of that inheritance of the Anbiya alayhi salam. Today we might get, not even a percent. Maybe they had a few percent. Now imagine what the Anbiya alayhi salam had. Imam al-Nawawi never laid down in his talab when he was a student. He says it himself. Inshallah, we'll speak about that when we go into his biography. And a story that I have heard from the mouth of an individual, a sheikh. He came to our madrasa, he spoke to us. I won't take his name. So this sheikh was a student. He graduated from Darul Ulum Deoband, which is a big madrasa in India. A lot of the madaris that we see around the world today are, branches of Darul Ulum Deoband. It's very famous. It's nicknamed Azharul Hind, the Azhar of India. It's a great madrasa. This individual, he's still alive today, mashallah. He graduated from Darul Ulum Deoband. He said one day he was studying in the library in Darul Ulum Deoband, and he said that he saw in a sharh of Tirmidhi, the book of Hadith, a commentary of that book, he saw that the individual is saying that there is a book that I'm referring to, and it only exists in manuscript format. This book can be found in Hyderabad, India. It's another city in India. So the scholar, he read this and he was filled with so much zeal, and he said that it's only in a manuscript, it's only there. He packed up whatever he needed, put it in his bag, and he traveled. He took a break from class. I don't know what he did. Maybe it was holiday time, or I hope he wasn't skipping class, but I'm sure he wasn't. It was probably break time. And then he went all the way to Hyderabad. Allahu Alam, he's not from India. This individual is not an Indian individual. He was a gharib, meaning he was a foreigner. And he went from Darul Ulum Deoband, in Deoband. He went to Hyderabad, he traveled somehow, he got there, he found a manuscript in that ancient library, he read the manuscript, and he took whatever notes he had to, and then he came back. Now, this is in our time, and he's a bit older, but it's relatively our time because he's still alive. So this is actually happening. Those people who really want knowledge, they will search for knowledge. The point why he said that to us, after he mentioned that, he told us, do you know that this book itself, and then he asked us, do you know the name of this book? He mentioned the book's name. So we were in the final year, and he was in the final year when he went to search for that book. So none of us could say, it was Intiqadul I'tirab. So none of us could say what that book was. So he said that, do you know that same book is now available on PDF? If you go online, you can find it. Just type it in on Google, you have it. But he said the point that he was making was the more wasail and means we have, the less talab and zeal we have. The more technology increases, the less people have zeal. It's there now. You want to download Sahih al-Bukhari? Back then, they had to write a manuscript. They used to go and write the entire manuscript by day, and at night they would have a lesson by night of what they wrote. Now you just type it in Google, alhamdulillah, you have the entire Sahih Bukhari, you have Musnad Ahmad, 50 volumes, it's ready to go. But we're not going to read it anymore. That's our zeal. So it's very important to have zeal as a student of knowledge. You will go as far as you set your goals. If you have that himma, that's what it's called, himma, that ability to go forward, that perseverance, then you will be able to go forward. Look at these stories. So Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi, he was a very famous scholar and also a graduate from Darul Ulum Deoband, and is very influential. He said amongst his statements, he would say that if an individual guarantees me these things, as a student, I guarantee his success. If he can do these certain things, I guarantee his success. Those things were, he said, mutala'a, istima', takrar, and I added dawr. So, mutala'a, studying the lesson the night before. So you know you have your lesson, you have your book. Whatever the teacher is going to teach the next day, you look over that. So when you go to class, you already know what he's going to say, and you know which portions you don't understand, and you have an idea of what's happening. That's essential. Then number two is to listen properly. Absorb whatever you can of what the teacher is saying. Some shuyukh, they would listen so much to the sheikh when he's speaking, they wouldn't take notes. They used to rely on their memory, obviously. We can't do that nowadays. Maybe, mashallah, some of you can, some people who have photographic memory, but I certainly cannot do that. So they were able to listen and absorb everything, and after the dars, they would write everything down. That's how much focus they would have. And then he said, number three, takrar, which means muraja'a, revision with students. We would have to form a halaqa, have 3 or 4 students, and then one individual would revise one book, then another one would revise the other, and they would all listen and correct if they had any mistakes. That's essential. And obviously, dawr, which is the one that I added, is revision. So you need to revise previous lessons as well. So that's for a general student. So he said, anyone that can do these things, I guarantee them success. So inshallah, we'll stop here. I have about 4 minutes to prepare for Salatul Isha, inshallah. Any questions anyone has? طيب, Jazakumullah khairan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our a'mal and accept us and give us ikhlas in everything that we do and make us true students of deen. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خيرا. Inshallah, we will see you soon. السلام عليكم.